all, how many of you do have a budget? It's fine if you don't have one, so don't, just give me an indication. Okay. A few, but not everybody. I know some people feel that a budget is very restricting and it's, boring, and it's for those people who don't have anything better to do with their time. But let me ask you another question. How many of you are tired that by the end of the month you do not know what happened to your money? Is there anybody like that? You're just tired of, goodness, it's gone, but you don't really know what happened to it. That if you are in that position, a budget will really benefit you. It's really going to add to your life. You see, and it's like Steve also said, many people live from the one salary check to the other. Unfortunately, because nobody's ever taught them to do it differently. And to change your situation, you need to think differently. You don't need to have a lot of knowledge. You don't need to have a financial degree or a BCom or anything like that. You just need to change your thinking and get a few practical things in place. So I want to show you. I got this for my son. You can buy it at Crown Financial Ministries. Go onto the internet. There's awesome resources as well for kids. We use that at the moment at our kids' church on Sundays. So during our generosity month, we also teach the children on finances. Great resources. The one says spending, the one says giving, and the one says saving. This is Vian's tins. And it's amazing at the age of 7 that I can teach him in a very simple way how to manage his finances. He knows some must go to Jesus. He knows some he can spend and some he must save. And it's, even though my dad was always very responsible with money, I have 3 brothers and a sister. My dad is a teacher, and my mom only started working again when my youngest brother went to school. Then my sister was 16 years old. So for a very long time, my mom stayed at home, and my dad provided for a big family. And my dad always says, if people ask him, how did you do that? Then he says there's 3 reasons. I did not go on expensive holidays, I did not drive an expensive car, and I did not marry a wife who is very expensive. That's his 3 reasons, for being able to provide for a big family on a teacher's salary. But we have to teach our children. So how can we teach our children if we don't know how to do it? And it's not difficult, but it starts with a few practical things in place. So I want to share with you, that's also in your notes, the 70% principle of lasting wealth. It's not exactly the same as these tins, but if you are not in debt, if you don't have any debt, the first 10% goes to your tithe. I'm not going to speak about tithing now. It's a topic for a different day. But if you are serving God and if you want God's blessing on your finances, the first 10% goes to your tithe. The second 10% goes into savings. Okay? First 10 into your tithe, second one into savings. I'm going to explain to you now how we save. Savings is something you're not going to use this month, but you might use it next month. Or you might use it 6 months from now. That's savings. But you start saving this month. And then the third 10% goes toward investments. I'll also speak a bit about retirement annuities. I know all of you have lots of questions on that, and I know Steve's session maybe did not include all of you, because some might not even have a retirement annuity. You might not even know what an RA. Oh goodness, they talk about an RA. What is an RA? So I'm gonna touch on that as well. But 10%, that's the 70% principle of lasting wealth as a minimum. You could try and live even off less of that, but that means you live on 70% of your income. That makes sense? Because 10% goes to your tithe, 10 goes to savings, and 10 goes to investments. It's just you can structure it in any kind of way, but the bottom line is we need to learn how to live on less than 100% of our salary per month. That's your secret. You see, that's the key to financial peace, because if you live on 100% of your income, you will feel pressure. If you live on 70% of your income, you will feel rich. And that is what I experienced. That is truly how it works. If you are in debt, that 10% changed a little bit, or that's 70% principle of lasting wealth. The first 10% goes to your tithe, even though you are in debt. The second 10% goes into paying off debts, which should then be actually additional to your monthly debt commitment, if possible. So it goes into paying off more than possible, if you could. The third 10% then goes into savings. It doesn't really make sense to make big investments if you have a lot of debts. Okay, depending on the kind of investment. If you're going to buy a house, we have very limited time now, so maybe if we speak about things and it creates more questions than answers, then we need to either have a session or you must email us or something. We have people in church who can also assist if you want to sit with somebody to draw up a budget, so let me know if you are desperate for a session. Okay. But it doesn't really mean to invest and you earn 7% on your investment, but you pay more interest on your debt. Then you should rather put that money into your debts. That makes sense to you? So this is why, if you have debt, it looks a bit differently. Okay, so I just want to share with you my story. When I started working, I earned 3,600 Rand per month, of which 700 I had to pay for a laptop. So effectively I earned 2,900 because the 700 I never saw because it was deducted to pay my work laptop. 2,900. I lived in a bachelor flat with a friend, and after 2 months she went to America to do au pair work. She left me with a whole rent to pay. It was $550. It jumped to $1,100 after she left. I couldn't find a roommate immediately, so I had $2,900 and my rent was $1,100. Okay, I gave $360 to the church because that was my conviction, to tithe on my gross income. Remember, that was 3,600. So it left me with 1,440 Rand per month to do everything. Okay, I had no car, I had no cell phone, and I had to live simply. This is why I used cash. It's the only way I could have survived. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It taught me a lot of things. It taught me that it's possible to survive with a very limited income. I didn't have a car. I've shared the story, so some of you might know it, but for 9 months I didn't have a car. It was quite a crazy time in my life. But did I die? No. Was it a pain? Yes, it was. It was a massive frustration for me, but I didn't die. And I did not want to get myself into a position where I cannot breathe because of debt. So I waited. I waited for the right opportunity. So we have to ask the Holy Spirit for lifestyle guidance before we start earning a lot of money. Otherwise, we can literally just up our standard of living every time we get a salary increase. If you do not close that circle, of forever upgrading and forever spending more and forever, just wanting more and having more and doing more expensive holidays, you forever gonna stress over finances. You're never gonna build up wealth. And I don't think we're going to ever learn to become generous, because I think the reason why God often gives us more is so that we can be more generous, not necessarily for us to drive a fancier car. So that's something you can chew on and think about. But let me get to the very practical side. You will find a budget in your... Okay, now first before you turn to your budget, I'll get to the details now. For 3 months, and for those of you who are maybe not administratively so focused, this might be a challenge for you, but if you're married, the one who is the most focused on detail could maybe do it. If you're single, get a friend to help you, or just put your accountant hat on for 3 months. You have to keep track of everything you spend for 3 months. If you have no budget, if you have no idea where your money is going, you have to keep track. So you literally need to write down every time you swipe your card, every time you pay for something, you need to write it down. It's going to take a bit of discipline. You can do it in whichever way you want. If most things go off electronically and you just swipe your card for groceries and things like that, you can literally just go to your bank statement and add up all of those things. Every time you go to Spar or Pick n Pay, and put that in a certain pot, okay? Instead of writing down every detail of every slip. But if you're really battling and you want to change this, you have to keep track of what you spent, and you have to write it down. It's the only way. You have to do it for 3 months because there will be different expenses during different months, and then you have to take an average for the 3 months. Okay, are you all still with me? To write it down, you need to add it up, divide it by 3, and then you say, okay, I've spent so much on groceries. I've spent so much on petrol. I've spent so much on, because I think we often think this is how much we spent, but the actual is very different to your budgeted thing in your head. I mean, even us, we have a budget. The actuals are mostly not in line with the budget, unless it's like something like rent, which is fixed every month. But something like groceries or petrol, it varies every month. So you have to have an idea of your actual, otherwise you can't budget. So you need to start with your actual and write it down. Then Excel could be very useful for those of you who know how to use Excel. It's very simple. If you don't know how to use it, go to a friend and ask them just to show you how to use Excel. Okay, for those of you not familiar with that program. If you are married, once again, you have to do this together with your spouse. If you are the husband, you are in charge of the finances, you have to include your wife. You have to include your wife. If the wife is maybe the one who enjoys it more, or she has the financial background and she does it, you have to at some point then include your husband. You know, you have to have a meeting. You have to talk about it. In our situation, I enjoy it, so Andre leaves it to me to do the budget and to do all the admin behind the scenes. But every now and again, if there's a change, if there's either a salary increase or either a drop or a increase in our income, I would redo it, and then we would sit together and I ask him, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And then we sit together, I say to him, this is my suggestion, because I also have a good feel of, say, Vian's needs and our son, 7-year-old son, school fees. I'm just more focused on the detail at this stage in terms of our personal budget. Then we talk through it, we decide on what we're going to do, and then I continue for another year. We never, I promise you, we never fight over finances. In the first year of marriage, it was more complicated. When I was the only one working, it was very stressful for me. We had quite a few arguments over can we, should we, you shouldn't have, and all of these things. We are in a position now where there's so much peace and freedom, and it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable purely because there's not stress and there's no pressure. But you have to do it together as a couple. So finances in marriage is a bit of a different ball game than when you are single. But it could be and should be peaceful and enjoyable, and it should not be a burden. All right, this is what you should work towards. Complete peace, freedom, and no arguments in your marriage when it comes to finances. It is possible. It's really possible. I just want to read you 3 quotes, and then we're going to go into a practical budget. A quote by John Piper. The issue is not, that's in your notes, I think. The issue is not how much a person makes. Big industry and big salaries are a fact of our times, and they are not necessarily evil. The evil is in being deceived into thinking that a $100,000 salary per month must be accompanied by a $100,000 lifestyle. God has made us to be conduits of His grace, and the danger is in thinking that the conduit should be lined with gold. It shouldn't. Copper will do. That's just something for you to think about, because when we do our budget, it's very important to honor God, because we need Him. Okay, let's be honest. when we try to do it in our own strength and in our own capability, we battle. We need the provider of heaven and earth, the creator of heaven and earth, whose name is God our provider, to come and step in. C.S. Lewis said the following: there ought to be things, which means there must be things that we should like to do and cannot do, because our charitable expenditure excludes them. Not because we don't have the money. It's not, there ought to be things that we should do and cannot do because we don't have the money. This is not what he's saying. Because our charitable expenditure excludes them. So think about that one. Then there's another one by Sonika Kruger. That's me, for those of you who didn't know. Just because you can afford it does not mean that you should buy it. This is my own quote. Just because you can afford it does not mean that you should buy it. And I don't say it lightly. I really don't say it lightly. I've been in a position in my life where I was there. I could afford many things. I shared the story before, but there was a stage in my life where I earned so much, I would literally walk through Game, for example, through that aisle where they have all these kitchen gadgets and implements, liquidizer and slow cooker and all those things. And I don't spend much time in the kitchen. I don't spend much time in the kitchen. I just do what is necessary. But now I walk through the aisle where all of these kitchen things are, and I had no desire to have them. I did not know even how to use most of them. But all of a sudden I think, I can buy this because I could. And all of a sudden I wanted to buy them. And my heart all of a sudden was drawn to all of these things in the shop just because I could. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you today. Just because you could afford it does not mean that you should have it or that you should buy it. And it goes together with what John Piper and C.S. Lewis said. There must be certain things we can do, but we are not going to do it because we make a decision, and we do that by budgeting, to live in such a way that will be honorable to God and that will be flexible so that we can give and can help and be generous, but also enjoy life. Remember, in all of this, you have to realize that the idea is not to sell everything and give it to the poor. God wants to empower us to be a blessing. And He's a good Father. He wants to bless us. But we need to make a decision before we start, before the millions and the billions come in, and the thousands, if you maybe not even with the thousands or the 100,000s yet. Before that comes in, you need to make a decision how you're going to live. Because I tell you, when the millions come and you haven't made that decision, it's going to be very difficult to make the decision. And we do that by doing a budget. So, before we go into the detail, when you do a budget, you're going to have monthly expenses. Okay, so it happens every month, typically like your rent or food or petrol, things like that. You're also going to have medium to long-term expenses. This is where we're going to save towards. There's medium to long-term expenses, like saving for a car, saving for a fridge. Then you're going to have once-in-a-lifetime expenses, like studying, saving for a wedding, saving for a wedding ring. Once-in-a-lifetime expense, eh? Once-in-a-lifetime expense. Saving towards something that should theoretically happen once in your life. And we have to kind of include all of those in our budgets, if possible. If not, when I earned my 2,900, there was no way in which I'm going to start saving for a wedding. Okay? It's just not possible. So depending on your situation, depending on your season, depending on where you are at, this is how you're going to plan your budget. And also, if your income is limited and you must go without certain items, you leave it in God's hands, because God knows how much you earn and He knows how much you need. This is the beauty of serving God. This is the beauty of honoring God when it comes to our finances, because we can draw from our heavenly accounts. Amen? We can draw money from our heavenly account by praying and standing in faith when we need something that we can't afford ourselves. Good. So now you can go to your budgets in your notes, if you're not there already. I did a budget on a 15,000 Rand income, just for illustration purposes. Some of you might earn less, some of you might earn more. If you are a family, you would have 2 incomes. So I'm primarily going to focus on this is a single person. If you are married, I would recommend that it is our money and not your money and my money. Because you are one. You are now one. Which means the moment there's like, oh, I pay for this and you pay for this, and, switch off the lights because I'm paying for the electricity, it can cause, you'll be surprised how many fights there can be over you pay this and I pay this and you better work together because it's my bill, Or I pay for the groceries, so no Pringles, it's too expensive. It should be our money, it should be our debt, it should be our expense and our income. This is the way we do it. So if you have more questions on a marriage relationship and finances, we can talk afterwards, but it is a bit of a different ball game, but you have to communicate. Okay, so this budget is for a single person, and I work on 15,000. You can go onto the internet. There's many websites that can show you exactly how you can work out after tax. This 15,000, the after tax is 13,546. There's many programs on the internet that can work it out for you. This is the assumption that your employer does not pay your medical and your employer does not pay your retirement annuity. Okay, so all that came off here is your tax and your UIF. If you don't know what UIF is, don't worry too much. Okay, but there's taxes that comes off. Now, to do your budget, you must open your pay slip first. Yeah, you can laugh, but there's so many people that tell me they never open their pay slip because they don't know what they earn. And then I think, but how do you honor God? You have to know what you earn so that you can honor God. You can't guess your tithe. Okay? And then it's people that I think they are solid, they're solid Christians, and then they know they don't know what they earn because they never open their payslip. Please open your payslip. Please open your payslip. Make sure what you earn, because if you don't know what you earn, you can never start your budget. You can't just make up a number. So you need to, this is why I said you must bring your payslip just for yourself. I'm not gonna ask you to leave your payslip behind and check, You just for your own purposes. Okay. This also, the total net income also includes the tax benefit on your retirement annuity. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, let me just go into a bit more detail than what Steve did. If you have a retirement annuity, which means you pay money for Alexander Forbes or for Liberty or some of these companies, they manage your finances on your behalf. They buy shares. In South Africa and overseas, they buy shares for you at companies, and they manage that on behalf of you, and you pay a certain amount to them. It does cost quite a bit. It's quite scary to see how much they take. However, if your investment grows, if it still grows by quite a percentage per year, more than what you would earn in the bank, it's still worth it. Okay, I know Steve focused a lot on property and that the retirement annuity is not necessarily such a good investment. I completely agree with him, but you need money to buy a house, to start renting it out. You need a couple of 100,000 actually. But you can start with a retirement annuity for a couple of 100 Rand per month. So if you don't even have that, I would suggest that you start there. Okay, you get a quote, you go to Alexander Forbes, you email somebody, you get a quote, and you get an idea of what it's going to cost you per month. It's a forced way of saving. Even though you pay for it, it's a forced way of saving, and it's better than nothing. Okay, just if you're wondering about that. Also, there's a tax benefit on a retirement annuity. And as Steve also said, in the long term, it's better to have your own assets and managing your own assets. But it's just some of us are not there yet. Not at all. And you have to start somewhere. So I would suggest that putting a little bit away into something like a retirement annuity where you at least get a tax benefit is better than nothing. Okay, any questions around that? Okay, otherwise I'm going to just continue. Okay, your tithe should be your first item on your line item on your budget, not your last one. Because you always take it from the top, which means there is always 10% to give. This is how we do it. We tithe on gross. I'm not going to go into a debate now, should it be gross or net. We tithe on gross, so I put there 1,500. Gross means before tax. Then I put a retirement annuity. You can do any kind of long-term investment. Remember I said 10% goes into your tithe, 10% goes to investment, 10% goes into savings as a minimum. It's the principle, 70% principle of lasting wealth, if you want to grow your wealth. Retirement annuity, we've spoken about that. Rent will definitely be something, it's either going to be your bond payment or rent. You trust God for a place that you can afford. As I say, I shared a bachelor flat with a friend. Do you know what a bachelor flat looks like? It's just one big room and a kitchen. It's all open plan. It's not many people would do that, but I didn't have any other option financially. And it was good. It was good. It taught me a lot of things. You don't have to live in your own flat. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. So trust God for something that you can afford. I hear so many stories of people testifying that God provided something beautiful that they can afford. So that is rent. A car. Okay, this budget is also assuming you don't have any debt, except I put down 1,000 rand payment for a car, which is not a lot. But that is all I could fit into my budget. So at this stage. So I need to look for a car that's going to be 1,000 rand a month. Otherwise, I must walk, or I must ride my bicycle, or I must buy a scooter. Okay, there's families in the church who have one car, and the husband literally walks to his a doctor, one of our doctor couples. He walks to Free Hospital in the mornings. I have so much respect for that. There's another couple, the husband's riding his bicycle to work. They have one car. They live simply. Okay? If you can, in any way, if you are in a position where you cannot afford something and it's going to strangle you because of debt, trust God for another option. Trust God for a lift club. Trust Him for something. Okay? But do not go and overextend yourself and buy a car that's going to strangle you. Okay, insurance. Okay, there was questions about insurance. Let me just give you my opinion as well. Some of these things are my convictions, my and Andre's convictions. You need to sort out with God and with your spouse, if you're married, what do you believe? Okay, in terms of insurance. We have insurance on our house. We're renting, but we have insurance on the content of our house and our cars. One of my cars were written off previously by a friend. And if we did not have insurance, it would have been a very bad situation. Praise God, we did. So I really believe it's wise. We live in a fallen world, unfortunately. We live in a fallen world. If you can't afford it, you trust the Lord to keep you safe and your car safe. But don't say, I can't afford it, I stand in faith, and then you go to movies 3 times a week. Okay? So you need to be honest with yourself, whether you could actually afford it or not, and whether this is faith or this is just, you're just irresponsible with your money. So we have insurance on that. We have often spoken about life insurance. Many people pay a lot of money on life insurance. And I agree with Steve, it depends on your situation, especially if you are the provider and maybe your wife does not have a proper qualification. So if something happens to the husband, the wife is going to be in a very difficult situation. We've just always spoken about it that even if I get left behind, which I'm not, I'm living with my husband at the same time, I would be able to support myself because I have a qualification. I would be able to go to work and to do something. So it's not as if I'm going to sit on the street and not be able to do it. When you are a parent and you have children, however, it's something you need to look at maybe just for your children's sake if something happens to both of you. I've just seen people, they do it because of fear and not of they're not necessarily doing it because they're responsible. They're doing it because they are freaked out by the idea of something is going to happen. Okay, so please check your motivation when it comes to life insurance. We can't live in fear. We're all going to die, but God is not dying. Okay, we must remember, even if we leave somebody behind on earth, God is still there. It is just that we should be responsible enough that whoever are being left behind does not become somebody else's responsibility. Okay, please. So we need to be responsible for our families, but we can't so over-insure ourselves because we are fearful. Okay, because unfortunately, when it comes to financial planning, the people play on your fears. Okay, and I've been in the financial world for a long time. If you add up all the insurance that they suggest or they recommend, it's thousands. Wat is ongeskiktheid? What? Disability. Yeah, disability. You must have disability and you must have life insurance. You must have this and this and this and this, and then by the end, it's like half your salary, depending on what you earn. So just whenever you consider these things, discuss it with your spouse and think about it and pray about it. And don't do it because of fear. Do it because you feel at peace that this is going to be a responsible decision. Does that make sense to you? Okay. I would suggest as a minimum you have insurance on your car, your house content, and then also medical insurance. This is what we have. Medical insurance means you have a hospital plan, like many of us would know it. We don't have a medical savings plan, which means we don't just go to the chemist and we tell them send the invoice to the medical aid. I don't just go to the doctor and say send my invoice to the medical aid, because there's actually an admin fee connected to that. Once again, somebody else manages your money on behalf of you, so you pay extra. Okay, so I tested it, so you can test it as well, but I've been to the chemist. In the past, when we did have a medical plan, I would buy something, cash. I just say, cash, thank you, buy. I would pay 30 Rand, and then when I say you can just, use my medical aid, medical savings, then I pay more. It's great if you are not a consistent saver. If you're battling to save for your medical expenses, it's good. If you are not battling to save, I would suggest you save separately. Like I have, this medical aid, 1,100. I checked a few medical aids now last week just to get an updated number. You need to, it's not cheap. Medical insurance is crazy. Hey, but that does not even include a medical savings plan. This is just the hospital plan. Then I suggest you save separately for your medical expenses on a monthly basis. Do you all understand now what I'm talking about? Okay, you can either just have medical insurance, which I would recommend, especially if you're a married couple, if your wife falls pregnant, all of those things are extremely expensive. So just at least for that. But I think it's wise to have medical insurance. Okay, if you cannot afford it, once again, God is really faithful, and we have public hospitals. It's not the end of the world, but again, you do it because you honestly can't pay for it, and then you trust in the Lord. Okay, but those are the two insurances that I would personally recommend for everybody. Electricity and water, that's something that you could kind of manage a little bit by switching off the geyser, and all of those things. I would just recommend that you don't get too tense about electricity and water, that it's going to affect your marriage relationship, especially if you're married. Now your husband can only shower for 2 minutes. You can't use all the whole geezer's water, 2 minutes only, and now you scream, switch off close the tap, you've had your 2 minutes. Or you don't even want to bake a lasagna in the oven because it's going to be so expensive to switch on the oven. You can get very worked up, However, you could save on electricity if you are wise, and if you're really tight, it is an area where you can save. Okay, so please see what you can do to save on this. We work from home and we are at home all the time, so our electricity is quite high, but it's also our work environment. So see what you can do. Cell phone is another thing that can be a really, really unnecessary big expense. So I don't want to say much on this, but just watch yourself. Watch how much time you spend on phoning. I mean, praise God for WhatsApp voice notes nowadays and internet. I mean, this is the reason I didn't have a cell phone originally in 1999, because it was just crazy. There wasn't like WhatsApp or anything. It was SMS and it was phone. It was just crazy, the costs. You don't have to have the latest and the greatest. I know it's cool to have the latest and the greatest, but 6 months from now, it's not the latest and the greatest anymore in any case. So if your cell phone is like a temptation to have a smart and a fancy and a really expensive thing, just bring it before God and just check, God, is it really necessary? Or if there's part of my image, especially if you're battling to afford it. Okay, this could be something where you can save. Bank charges, I just said 100 Rand, it all depends on your bank. Please check your bank charges. Please go through your bank statement. You might be shocked to see how much the bank actually asks you to swipe your credit card, to do a transfer. It depends on from bank to bank. Capitec is, I'm not getting commission from Capitec or anything, but they're very affordable in terms of their monthly bank charges. I think FNB is also, I don't know all the charges for all the banks. Please just make sure, I know it's a lot of admin to change banks. I know it's a lot of admin. I've done it a couple of years ago. But if you can save a couple of 100 Rand, it's worth it. And it's going to be every month. Please check your bank charges. But that is something people forget to put on their budget. And then it's like this couple of 100 Rand is just gone. Gym or exercise. You have to budget for recreation, eh? Is it recreation? Recreation. You have to budget for a hobby or exercise. Once again, if you can't afford the gym, you must go jog, or you must ride your bicycle. There's many ways to get exercise. You must do your tummy exercises at home, or buy weights at game and you do your weights at home. Do whatever you want to do, but please don't commit to the gym and then you never go. This is such a waste of money, and I'm sorry, but there's many people who do that. Now there's like this monthly commitment for a certain period of time, and then you don't even go to the gym. So please make sure about your commitment when it comes to exercise, or a club, some kind of club, a tennis club or a cricket club or golf. Also not cheap, eh? Any sport where you join a club, just count the cost. Think. My wife's having a baby in 2 months. I'm not going to now join the golf club, okay? I hope you're not going to join the golf club. Just think about a commitment that's going to now be for a year or 2. These things are normally for a year. Just think about that. There are other ways to exercise. Petrol, I've spoken about that, okay? Just check exactly how much you spend per month. You need to go to your bank statement, or you need to somehow keep track, because you might spend more or even less than what you think. I don't know. And if you feel this is something that you could decrease by joining a lift club or whatever, go for it. Okay, this is something that's a little bit controllable depending on your situation. Domestic worker. It's something that's a luxury, a domestic worker. However, if that saves you time and energy to spend with your family, to spend with God, and if it's an investment in your emotional and your spiritual health, I would recommend that you have somebody who help you in the house. I know you can do it yourself. I know the expectation sometimes from our moms and our mother-in-law is that you can do it yourself because they did it. It depends on your scenario. You see, I'm in a position at the moment where I would actually pay somebody to have more time. Because for me, time is like a commodity that I value a lot. Because my time means, if I have extra time, it means I have extra time with God. I have extra time with my son. I have extra time with Andre. I have extra time for people. And for me, that's, anybody can clean my house, but not anybody can spend time with my husband. Sorry. Or with my son. And I have to get to God, you see. So it is something that we could see it as a luxury, but for me, it's quite a necessity because it buys me time. Okay, so I would recommend that if your wife, if you're married and your mom always did it herself and your mother-in-law is adamant, your wife can do it herself, but she's not coping, please get her somebody to help her in the house. You can have a happy wife again. If your wife is emotional and tired all the time, it's not nice. So, however, you could either completely you can have it every day, or you can maybe have it once a week or once every 2 weeks. Okay, so this is something you need to sort out. But I also want to encourage you not to underpay the people who clean your house. Rather get them less, but pay them something decent. Find out and make sure that you treat them. The lady who works for us, she's been working for us for 7 years. She's not well. She should actually retire. She's diabetic, but she is so faithful. And I just felt God say to me, you must take care of her. You must look after her, you must look after her well. So I want to encourage you to do that. Pets, just be careful. I said 100 rand. I mean, we have a hamster, Kolikis. He costs me about 20 rand a month, I think. He's low maintenance. Just, pets could be a massive expense. Okay, it's a cute little dog, and I want a dog, and now you have the dog, and all of a sudden the dog gets sick, and there's injections, and there's toothache, and now you go to the vet, and it's quite scary how much a pet could cost. So you just need to, it's like a little baby in the house. How many of you have pets? You know what I'm talking about? Oh, you all know what I'm talking about. Just make sure that you actually want to spend money on a pet. You have to take your pet to the vet if he's sick. You can't just ignore your pet or just give him away. Okay, so a pet could be a big item on your budget, but you need to be prepared. Don't be naive and think you're just going to play with your dog, and when the dog is sick, it's going to sort itself out, okay? Groceries. Groceries is one of those things where you need to kind of keep track, because on my budget, this goes like this in a sense, because it's actually a pot that's too big. There's too many things going into that line item. So it might be good to separate groceries and household items. Household items would be your cleaning, like your jig and your handy and those things. Or even toiletries, you can include there. You need to maybe separate that, because I've seen everything is kind of under control for us, but the grocery pots is a little bit out of hand, because I don't keep track of every little slip, because I have kind of an idea what we spent, but that could be a big pot of uncertainty. Okay, so if you feel this is where the uncertainty lies, because the rest is relatively fixed, you need to go into that a bit deeper. Okay, so now just the last 5 minutes. I want to spend on the savings part. You see this? Then I say short-term savings, 1.5. Remember, that's another 10% of your income. We save for specific items per month, even though we're not going to incur that expense that specific month. It changed our lives. This is where the no stress come in when it comes to our budget. So we budget for, Andre laughs at me because he says our finances must be the most complicated in the whole world because I have like 20 columns every month, and I put 50 rand there and 10 rand there and 100 rand there, but I save towards all my things, you see. And it really works for us, because this month you're not necessarily going to buy clothes, but next month you want to. And now you can also use last month's savings for that. So I just want to give you an idea for what you could save. We save for giving. This is a very, very important one on our list. And the reason why I say it's savings and not an expense, if I don't necessarily give every month. This is not your tithe. I'm not talking about tithing now. Tithing is right on top of your list. Giving is also, I would suggest, if you say, for example, give every month to a missionary or an institution, you would also put it as part of an expense. That's a monthly commitment. This giving is, I do not know what I'm going to give it towards, but it must be there. It must be, I want to be ready to give. So this month I save 3, next month I save another 3, next month I save another 3, and then I have 900 Rand to give to somebody who goes on missions. How awesome is that? And you don't really feel it that much because you dedicate it for that. So what I do is I take the 1,500, I put it into a different account. Now, at our bank, I can just transfer from my main account to a savings account. I can make 10 transfers per day, and it doesn't cost me money. It depends on your bank. Okay, so for me, it's not that much admin. I do it very quickly. I can quickly give 900 and then from my main account, and then transfer it back from my savings back into my main account. Okay, I hope I'm not losing you, but I take the 1.5 every month, put it in a separate account, then I have an Excel spreadsheet that says, okay, you have your things there, giving, clothes, holidays, medical, entertainment, car services, capital expenditure. It adds up in my Excel spreadsheet to 1.5, and in the bank account there's also 1.5. So I literally copy the bank account number into my Excel spreadsheet, and I have a column next to it that says, is there a difference? But you would be able to see also if there's a difference. And then if I spend this money, I keep track of it, and I put it from that account back into my other account, if you didn't draw it from that specific account. Okay, if you have questions on this, you can ask me. It's actually very simple. You just need to find a way that works for you. So we save for giving. We save for clothes. We save, you see, so in the beginning when Andrew and I got married, I felt guilty about everything when it comes to spending because I wasn't sure now, can I buy myself shoes? Because when I was single, I would just make the decision, but now I don't know. Will he approve? So then we said, okay, no, we must, even though it's one pot, I must have my own money, he must have his own money. And I don't have to ask him then. Okay, so if I budget a certain amount of money for myself, whether it's for clothes or for my skin products or whatever I use, I don't have to ask him. I just need to manage my columns. Okay. I just need to see, okay, I have 5, I can't now spend 1,000. I could, but then I need to negotiate again with my husband for more, which I often do. I negotiate often about extra money for myself. It's allowable to negotiate. Okay, holidays. Holidays is the one where we often overspend because there's petrol, there's eating out, and all of a sudden, goodness, there's 2,000 rands just gone. So I started budgeting for holidays because you go every now and again. So then at least you have a little bit of a kitty built up. Okay. Medical, this is our medical expenses because we don't have a medical savings plan. Entertainment, eating out. Car services can bite you if you didn't plan for that. So we save, and then once a year we have the 2,000 or 2,500 for a car service. We never stress about it because it just gets added up in my Excel spreadsheet, and it's in the bank, the different bank account, and then I just pay it. Okay, because that one is sometimes stressful. Goodness, I must service my car, and it's 3,000, and I don't know what to do. You know, we go through that. Capital expenditure typically would be you're saving for a fridge or you're saving for a television or you're saving for something. We're saving for a wedding ring. I'm telling you, the guys are going to get out their wedding rings soon. I feel it. Okay, other things to save for. It's on your notes. The other things, missions. You can save for missions for yourself. Birthdays or anniversaries when you are married. Also a big thing where we overspend because birthdays is only once a year, but now it's your husband's birthday. Now you want to buy him a gift, but now I don't want to ask him for money to buy him a gift, okay? So we have a column just for birthdays, anniversaries, just for the two of us. It builds up. Okay, now it's my birthday. He doesn't even check the column. He just goes and spends, and then I try to fix it somehow. Yeah. So it's something you need to think about. This is a once in a year expense. Okay, but in a marriage relationship, the money must come from somewhere, okay? If your husband buy you flowers, the money must come from somewhere, okay? Your child, if you are parents, your child university, we put away something for Vian every month. It's just in a cash. I've fixed it in an account where I get interest rate is not too bad, so it's not a policy or like insurance policy or something, because it doesn't always, it's not always so beneficial, to buy something and they save for your child's future. I just save for him cash myself. Okay. If you have questions on that, you can ask me later. Skin products, if you're a girl, you must save for that. Hobbies, vehicle expenses. Apart from your car service, like new tires or the renewal of your license, we paid like 600 or 700 rand a couple of months ago just to get your license thingy, your disc. Yeah. You must save for a baby. You could not must. You could save for a baby or a second child. Very good idea, to actually save. There's a lot of expenses when you have a child. A lot of things you need to buy, especially if it's your first one. Great idea, just to put away some money and to save towards that. Okay, there's a couple of really good resources that I just want to quickly show you. There's this book by Dave Ramsey, A Total Money Makeover. Really good, if you want to get that. This book changed me a lot, my heart, my opinions. It's a book by Randy Alcorn, Money, Possessions, and Eternity. Really good. There's a chapter on how to teach your children on finances. There's a chapter on your will and things that you leave behind. What do you do? Who do you give it to? There's a chapter on church finances and church buildings. There's so many churches, there's buildings that's just built halfway, and now there's no money anymore. It's just a brilliant, brilliant book. There's a chapter on insurance, on medical, on so many different things. It's not light reading. It's challenging and it's a thick book, but for those of you who are interested in many different areas of finances, personal and even investing, really good one. This one's very good, Wealth, Riches and Money by Alpert and Craig Hill. This teaches you quite in detail how to budget, how to close your circle, how to live within your means, really good. And this is just the one, the generosity ladder that that I spoke about in church last week. Okay, questions. I'm done, but if you want to maybe just ask a few practical questions, you're very welcome to do it now. Any questions on something I said, something that confused you, something you want to, yes? Yes, the question is, I said I would rather save money into a bank account than taking out an insurance policy for my child. It's just a personal preference, okay? Because I feel it's what Steve said. You have a bit more control over your money. So it might seem as if you make less, but at least you're not paying somebody else. There are costs involved for somebody to manage an insurance policy on behalf of you. And they always promise you a certain outcome, but that outcome is uncertain. They promise you something based on certain assumptions and things they make. So I just decided when it comes to Vian's university and thing, because this is what I save towards, I'm just going to do it myself in a savings account, and I don't earn much interest on that, but it's just a personal preference because I feel I have a bit more control over at least I know exactly what I will have within 5 years. Where with an insurance policy, there's a lot of uncertainties. And there's so many stories of people who actually they received much less than what they anticipated. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with policies. It is just that you have less control over the outcome. Okay.
Just we had a policy at the stage, and I went and I did the calculations. I looked at how much did we put in, how much would we have received interest if you like a fixed deposit would be like 6-7% or something, and I worked out what we got back, and we got less back than we if we just had put it in the bank with a normal interest rate. So then I was like, no, I'm over this. They can go jump. We'll just do it ourselves. But you need to then to be faithful, and you need to have self-control, not to go into that into those savings. So I want to agree with what Steve says, that you don't make much from it. Okay, any other questions?
Okay, if there's an unexpected, really big expense, how do you deal with that? I would try to deal with it in my short-term savings. What we sometimes do is we would go negative in one column, but the overall total is still positive. For example, holidays. Say, for example, we've saved 1,000 rand for holidays, but now my holiday cost me 2,000. Then I go negative into that column, but the overall total is still positive. So you could kind of borrow from yourself. Does that make sense? So you actually don't take out a personal loan where you're going to pay interest on that, but you have enough short-term savings, because remember now you must have 20 columns, of savings. That's a joke. You're saving towards quite a few things. So you might have in this, it says 1.5, but the ideal is that you must have like between 15 and 20,000, okay, I would say in this column. So which means if you have an unexpected 5,000 rand expense, you could borrow from this column and then just kind of pay it back over a year. Does that make sense to you? Yes? Okay, if it's more than now your 15 to 20,000 rand, I would try and stay away from a personal loan as far as possible, because it's going to be a short-term one then, on which you're going to pay a lot of interest. I would try and stay away from a short-term loan at all cost, because you're going to pay so much interest. I would then pray, okay? I would pray. Don't forget that God is really interested in this. It's not us, and He knows you've saved. He knows you are a good steward. He knows that you're honoring Him. Now you draw from your heavenly account, okay? There's lots of heavenly riches, because you honor God faithfully every month. And you can say, God, this is an unexpected expense. I do not have the money. I will use this, what I have, but please, God, I need you to come through for me. Okay, this is what I would do.
Just to add, I think Dave Ramsey is a specialist in financial management. He also speaks about the emergency fund, which is what Steve also said about the 1 to 2 months of your salary. I think you need to continuously work to that point. So if you earn 15, you need to try and get to 30 lying there. So if there's a crisis, then you sort it. So you're never actually going to be in a crisis scenario. So I think that's where you want to get to. Save.
I just want to add to that, apart from an unexpected expense, you could also maybe have a want, which means you want to buy something and you don't have the money. You can't even save for it. So now what do? You only have so much money, but you really desperately want to buy that thing. Bring it before God. Bring it before God. Say, Lord, what do you think? Should I have it? Should I not? Should I wait? What should I do? And the moment you have peace that God actually wants to give it to you, then you can trust Him for it. Okay, so whether it's an expense or a want or a desire or a need or whatever it is, if you feel that you're stuck in terms of your own personal ability to save, bring it before God. Okay. Leon. Okay. Okay. The question is whether I have a spreadsheet for budget versus actual, or how do we do that? Most of our things are relatively fixed. Okay, so I would say 80% of our line items just go off our bank account, like school fees, rent, or I pay it, I physically pay it. So what we do, I am left in my bank account with petrol and my petrol line, my grocery line, and that's basically it. Okay, the rest are all either paid out or deducted from my account. Whatever else is left goes into this saving short term. Okay, so So I don't do it exactly correct, like I'm teaching you now. So I'm left with a couple of thousand for petrol and groceries. And I make sure that I get to naught by the end of the month. So I kind of check, okay, I have 1,000 rand left for the next 7 days. I can't, this is all I can spend. Which means I don't have, I just monitor myself by making sure that I go to naught by the end of the month and I don't go over. Does that make sense? Because we kind of budget a whole salary away. It either goes into an expense or a savings. So I basically just go from, this is my income, by the end of the month there's nothing left, not because I've spent it, but because I've dedicated it either to spending or to saving or to giving. So I just go to zero by the end of the month and I know my budget's balanced. but maybe it's easier for me to do it like that. If you want to go budget actual for every line item, it's going to take you a bit more time, but then you need to do it on Excel and literally put in the numbers. Keep your slips, add it up. Okay, does that help? Yes. Yes. You need to check. So you see, I don't know how your things work. We have a available balance, which includes my overdraft on my credit card, which we never basically use. You see, I only use it when when there's like a timing difference. I also learned to relax about it because in the beginning I was very tense. Oh goodness, we're 500 rand over, but it's just purely because we put in petrol today and my salary will be put in tomorrow. And because my emergency funds are all lying in a different account. It's not because there's not money, it's just because I dedicate it away. Yes, so if you use your credit card for this, just make sure that you don't misjudge what money is actually available and what is your overdraft availability. That's what you mean, eh? Okay. Okay, yes? Like pocket money. Okay, so pocket money. You see, this goes in. The question is, where's my pocket money on my budget? That is all lying in this short-term savings. All right, so that's clothes. That's for me like spending money. Entertainment and eating out. We also have like a column. Say, for example, we get extra money. We'll normally say, okay, you can have so much, I can have so much, and the rest we do something else with. So we each have like a column of pocket money that we can spend. It's the reason I don't put it in my expenses line. I put it in the savings. Is this month I would not necessarily spend money on myself, but next month I will. But then I can again use last month's money. Does that make sense? So it's like either the clothes or the entertainment or you can add pocket money for yourself. We have each our own money. I just put it like pocket money. It's more like yes. We each have our own money that we don't have to ask each other the whole time for money, and then we can just spend it and make sure we manage that within our budget. Okay, yes. 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 Yeah. It's a good question. Yes. Yes. It's a very good question, but it's the question is what is the benchmark for groceries? What is a good benchmark for that? It's almost impossible for me to answer that because different families have different priorities. You see, when I was single, I literally, in that year, I would spend 300 Rand or 400 Rand per month on food. That was 1999. But even then, it was very limited because I limited myself. Because first of all, it wasn't a priority for me, and second of all, I didn't have the money. We've spent a lot more since we got married, because for a man in general, food is a bigger priority. You see, it's something you and your spouse. Well, that's just the fact of life, huh? It's if you and your spouse, or between you and God, need to determine that. You see, you can say, I don't buy feta cheese because it's a luxury. For somebody else, it's not a luxury at all. But for her, maybe nuts would be a luxury. So we've just come to a place where, in our financial life, we're adding a 500 Rand for something like feta cheese, because that's always a big thing for me, you know. Rich people buy nuts and feta cheese, and, you know. And I just learned to relax around it because I was very tense about everything I put in the trolley. I was very tense, and Andre taught me to be a bit less stressful about it. So the 1.8 could be 2.5, or it could be 1.2. It's really something you are the only one who can decide what is. It's like spending money on a holiday. What is the benchmark? I can't tell you, because for some people, they want to travel overseas, and for them, they would rather do that than buy a new couch for their lounge. You see, so this is where we could not actually judge or, you know, condemn one another, because you need to figure it out for yourself. Okay. However, if you are really tight, your grocery items is definitely a line item where you could save a lot of money. You could. You must just make sure that you don't stress so much about, I was at a stage where every trip to Spar or Pick n Pay was stressful for me. Every time, because this is where I grew up. I stressed on behalf of my parents for every trolley they bought. And I had to learn that this is not the way God wants me to live. Okay, so I can't really give you a benchmark. It's something that you need to have peace about and figure out for yourself, and not feel guilty about everything you buy. But if you feel too many luxuries, you know, I always wanted these ice creams, you know, on the stick. And then we were 5 kids, and my dad said, no, Sonika, I'm going to buy a 5-liter vanilla ice cream, then everybody can have. And I was like, I just want a little ice cream. I still have a soft spot for, you know, a Magnum or something, because I never grew up with it. My dad just said no. You see, and this is where the wisdom must come in when there's a household. He could have obviously given it to me, but he can't give it to 5 kids every time, all the time. Okay, does it help? Okay, I don't know how much. Can you still stay for another question? Okay, go for it. It's just the way our bank, the question is, why do we use a credit card as a debit card and not just use a debit card? It's just our bank just works like that. Your cards, it's like your account and your credit card, everything is linked. It's just one account, it's one card. We have one account, he's a secondary, we have like a credit card and a secondary credit card. Everything is linked, so we pay just bank charges for one account. So it's just the way our finances are being set up with our bank. Okay, I'm not even sure if they have debit cards. I suppose they have, but then we don't have the benefits of having everything into one account, paying one person's bank charges for one person. It's just our bank, okay, that works like that. Yes. Yes, in certain situations also a credit card is beneficial for certain transactions. So when you go overseas, can you use a debit card overseas? Sometimes. Okay, it's just, for us it's actually just convenient, and we use it as a debit card. So for us it's like one and the same thing. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, the comment is just that sometimes there's a better interest rate when you are when you have money in your credit card than having something in your debit card. Okay, if that will make any difference to some of you. Okay, I suppose we need to close the session. Okay.
Okay, please stand with me.